So the question is, given a string, find the first non-repeating character in it and return its index. If it doesn't exist, return -1. I may assume that the string can only contain lowercase letters and that the string will never be empty or null. So one example that I can run through is that if the string is Cameron, then the answer to this would be 0 because C is the index of the first non-repeating character in this string. If my string was Crazy Cameron, then my index would now be 3 because Z is the first non-repeating character in this string. So I'm going to go ahead and create the method signature. And we're looking for an index, which means that we're going to be returning an integer. And we can call it first char. And we're taking in a string as our only parameter. So there are a couple of ways to do this. And I think the brute force solution would be to just, for every character in the string, just look ahead and see if any of the other characters match. However, this solution runs in O of n squared time, and I think we can do better. So the approach that I'm thinking of is to create a hash of all the characters such that each character points to the number of times that it occurs in the string. And then after I create this hash, all I have to do is go through the string again and see if any of them point to 1. If they do, then I can return that index. And if I get to the end of the string and none of them map to 1, then I can return -1 because I know they all occur at least twice in the string. So the first thing I'm going to do is create a hash map. That maps characters to integers. And we can call it times, for the number of times each character occurs. And for shorthand, I'm just going to write HM for hash map that maps characters to integers, since I'm running out of space. Okay, so I want to create a for loop. That loops through all the characters of the string. And what I want to say is, if my hash already contains the character, then what I need to do is update its value to increase the number of times that it's pointing to currently. So if times.contains key the character at I, then what I want to do is say int val equals times dot get s dot character at I. And then I want to put that value back in the hash with 1 plus in it. Times dot put s dot character at I val plus 1. And then I want to close this off. Otherwise, if the character is not already in the hash, I know I can put it in the hash with a value of 1 since that's the first time we've seen this along the string. and then I want to close this for loop. Then down here, I want to create another for loop, and I want to go through the characters of S again. And then I want to say if the hash contains the character and its value is of 1, then we can just return that index because we're going in order, so we'll always get the first occurrence. Otherwise, if we get to the end of this loop and none of the characters have mapped to 1, then we know that all of them occur at least twice, so we can just return -1. So let's go ahead and try this on the example that we created here. So for Cameron, we're going to create a hash, and we're going to go through every character in Cameron. And so we're going to map, since C, the first letter, is not already in the hash, we're just going to create a new entry for it. So C maps to 1, and then A will also map to 1, and so will M. And in fact, all of these letters will map to 1 in this for loop. Then we come down to the next for loop, and we start at 0, and we say if times.get the character at 0, which is C, maps to 1, which it does, well, then we'll return I, which at this point is 0. And that is actually the correct answer. So if we run this again on Crazy Cameron, then what will happen is we're going to run through this. We're going to run through every character of the string and map them again. And we're going to count the occurrence of each character. And at the end, we'll have C that points to 2, R will point to 2, A will point to 2, Z will point to 1, Y will point to 1, and then we'll get to C again. But we know that the times already contains C. And so instead of creating a new entry, we're just going to put C back into the hash with its value increased, which is how we got to 2. And so then we get to M will point to 1, etc., until we reach the end of the string. Now when we go through this for loop for the second time, what we're going to see is that we get to 0, but C points to 2, so we're going to skip it. We're going to get to R points to 2, so we skip it. A points to 2, so we skip it. Z points to 1. And so at this point, I is equal to 3, because this is the index 3 in our string. So we're going to return 3. Let's try this one more time on a case that it should return -1 for. So we'll try it on the string A, B, B, A. So in this case, as we go through the hash, A will point to 1, then B will point to 1, then we'll get to B again, and we'll see that times contains B, and so we'll update that to be 2, and then finally we'll get to A again, which is already in the hash, so we'll change this to 2. Once that happens, we'll go through this array again, but at each index, none of the characters will actually be equal to 1, so we'll skip out of the for loop and end up returning -1, which is actually the correct answer for this. So the runtime of this, since we're only going through the characters in the string twice, is going to be O of n, because for each character, we're not performing we're only performing constant time operations, such as putting in or getting out of a hash. However, the space complexity of this solution is also O of n because we need to create a hash that has an entry for up to every character in the string. And so the runtime is O of n, and the space time is also O